The alien ship floated in the silent darkness of space, huge and glowing with cold blue lights. It was not made for beauty, but for function. Every surface looked smooth, and every corner hummed with hidden power. Inside, the air smelled of metal and strange energy, and in the deepest chambers, humans were kept behind glass walls like rare animals. The aliens had captured them many weeks ago. They called themselves the Zorith, a race that believed every life form could be explained by science. To them, humans were just another puzzle. They had studied many species before, but humans were different. Humans had survived wars, disasters, and endless struggles. Their history was filled with pain and hope, something the Zorith found confusing. Dranik, the chief alien scientist, moved slowly between the cages. His tall body shimmered with silver skin, and his black eyes reflected no emotion. He watched the humans with curiosity. A man pressed his hand against the glass, his eyes burning with anger. A child sat in the corner crying, while the mother held him close, whispering words that Dranik could not understand. The Zorith had one goal: to clone humans. They believed that if they could copy human bodies, they could create soldiers, workers, and maybe even slaves. It would give them control over a species that seemed to resist everything. But as the first experiment began, something strange happened. The cloning chamber was filled with glowing liquid. Human DNA was carefully placed inside. Machines hummed, lights flashed, and slowly a figure began to take shape. The aliens watched with excitement. A human body formed, skin, hair, and even fingerprints. It looked exactly like the man they had copied. But when the clone opened its eyes, the room grew silent. The eyes were empty. They were not alive, not truly. The body stood, it moved, but there was no spark. The clone repeated words in a flat tone. It breathed, it blinked, but it was hollow. Dranik wrote notes with fast hands. His assistants whispered nervously. "The structure is perfect," one said, "but something is missing." Dranik stared at the clone. His voice was calm but heavy. "It is not human," he said. "It is only a shadow." The real human in the cage shouted, "That is not me." His voice cracked with anger and fear. "You will never make another me." The child in the cage cried louder, and the mother pressed him close. Dranik turned his eyes to them. He saw something that made him pause. The mother's soft touch calmed the boy. Her eyes were full of warmth, something the clone did not have. The Zorith tried again. They repeated the process with another subject. This time they mapped the brain, transferred memories, and copied every cell. Again, the body looked perfect. The voice was the same. The face was the same. But when the clone spoke, there was no feeling in the words. It could not laugh. It could not comfort. It could not create. For the first time, Dranik felt something unusual. He felt doubt. He looked at the humans in the cages. They were weak compared to the Zorith, fragile and small. Yet there was something inside them that his machines could not capture. The scientists called it error. But deep inside, Dranik wondered if it was something more. The room grew tense. The clones stood like statues, moving only when ordered. The real humans pressed against the glass, shouting, crying, whispering prayers. One alien technician whispered, "They're missing the essence." Another hissed back, "There's no essence, only data." But Dranik said nothing. His black eyes stayed fixed on the human mother. That night, when the ship grew quiet, Dranik walked alone into the chamber. He stood before the clone and then turned his gaze to the real man in the cage. The man's eyes glowed with anger, but also with life. The clone's eyes glowed with nothing. Dranik whispered to himself, "What is the difference? Why can we not make this spark?" His voice echoed in the cold room, but no answer came. The machines could copy flesh and bone, but they could not copy the human soul. The experiment had begun, but the real mystery had just started. The experiments did not stop. The Zorith refused to accept failure. Every day, new machines were activated, new formulas tested, and new clones created. The chambers glowed with pale blue light, rows of empty bodies floating in glass tubes like puppets waiting for strings. Dranik observed the results with growing frustration. The bodies were strong, the faces flawless, the voices clear, yet each clone lacked something invisible. They followed orders but could not dream. They moved but could not feel. They looked human but were not alive. One technician presented a report. We have achieved 99% similarity, he said proudly. Muscle strength, reflexes, and even brain pathways match perfectly. But Dranik cut him off. 99 is still not 100. Look at their eyes. Do you not see the emptiness? The room grew silent. The real humans in the cages watched with fear and anger. They whispered among themselves, "They will never succeed," one man said, "because they cannot copy what makes us human." A woman answered softly, "They do not understand love. They do not understand the soul." The Zorith tried a different method. They injected the clones with artificial memories, hoping to give them identity. A clone awoke, speaking the name of the man it was copied from. It recited childhood stories, repeated the same laugh, and even remembered the smell of rain. But when asked to comfort a crying child, it stood still, silent, confused. The aliens tested it again. "Draw something new," they ordered. The clone pressed a pen to paper, but produced only meaningless lines. Dranik's assistants debated, "Perhaps humans are simple machines too." But with errors, one argued, their mistakes, their emotions, their chaos. "Maybe that is the missing factor." Another shook his head. "Chaos cannot be recreated. It is random." But Dranik whispered, "Or maybe it is not random at all." He found himself returning often to the cages, watching the prisoners. A little girl laughed while playing a game with her brother. They had no toys, only pebbles and a torn cloth. Yet their joy filled the chamber. Dranik stared. His black eyes reflected the glow of their laughter. The clone standing nearby did not even blink. The leader of the Zorith Council visited the ship. His voice thundered, "You promised us an army. Where is it?" Dranik bowed slightly. "The bodies are ready, but the spirit is missing." The leader snarled, "Spirit? Do not speak like the weak races. There is no spirit. There is only science." But Dranik stayed quiet, the doubt inside him growing stronger. One night, when the experiments had ended for the day, Dranik entered the cloning chamber alone. He stood between two figures, the original human and his clone. The original glared with fire, his eyes full of rage and hope. The clone stared blankly forward, waiting for instructions. Dranik stepped closer, whispering, "One has something no science can create. The other has nothing." The realization was heavy, but he did not share it for now. He kept his silence. The council would not accept weakness, and the other scientists would call him a fool. Yet deep inside, he knew the truth. The hollow copies were proof of something greater. The humans were not just flesh and memory. They carried something else, invisible yet powerful, and no machine, no alien hand could ever duplicate it. The hollow copies stood as empty shadows, while the real humans glowed with an unseen light. And Dranik, for the first time, feared that the Zorith had entered a war they could never win. The ship drifted quietly in space, but inside the chambers, tension grew heavier each day. The Zorith had created dozens of human copies, and yet every one of them stood like a statue. Their bodies worked, their voices echoed, but their hearts were silent. Dranik began to notice something strange whenever he walked past the human cages. The real humans laughed, cried, argued, and comforted one another. Their energy filled the air with something invisible. When he turned to the clones, the room felt cold, empty, lifeless. One evening, Dranik stopped outside a cage where a young boy sat trembling. The boy's mother knelt beside him, whispering words of comfort. She brushed his hair, kissed his forehead, and rocked him gently. The boy's tears slowed, his breathing calmed, and soon he smiled weakly. Dranik stared. His assistants also watched, confused. One muttered, "Strange reaction. The woman transmits no medicine, no energy, nothing measurable." Another replied, "Yet the child is better. How?" The next day, Dranik attempted an experiment. He placed a clone near the crying boy and ordered it to copy the mother's actions. The clone repeated the motions. It touched the boy's head. It spoke in the same voice. But the boy only cried harder. The alien scientists recorded the results. Puzzled, Dranik whispered, "It cannot comfort because it does not care." That night, as the ship's engines hummed softly, Dranik sat alone in his lab. He replayed recordings of the humans singing, laughing, and even fighting. Each time, The emotions struck him. They carried meaning, weight, and warmth. He compared them to recordings of the clones. Each word from the copies felt hollow, like empty shells. Days passed, and the difference grew clearer. When a man in the cage began to tell a story of his home, his voice trembled with both sadness and hope. The other humans listened, their eyes glowing. Even in despair, the clones, given the same story, spoke the words but failed to inspire anything. One alien technician suggested, perhaps there's an unknown particle, something hidden in human biology. Another argued, no, it is not physical, it is something else. They looked to Dranik for answers, but he gave none. His thoughts were locked deep inside him. One evening, Dranik returned again to the mother and child. The boy laughed as the mother tickled him. The sound filled the chamber like light in the dark. Dranik felt a strange weight in his chest. His kind did not laugh. They did not tickle. They did not love. Yet here was proof of a force stronger than science. When he walked away, whispers followed. Some of the younger aliens began to wonder too. Could it be true that humans carried something greater? Something not written in DNA, not mapped in brainwaves? Dranik wrote quietly in his personal notes, words that no one else could see. Humans are not just biology. They have something beyond measure. Perhaps this is why they survive when others fall. But the council would not accept such an idea. For them, emotions were weakness, souls were illusions. They demanded results. They wanted an army of perfect human copies, and every failure only added pressure to Dranik's shoulders. Still, the memory of the mother's gentle touch haunted him. The spark in her eyes, the warmth in her voice. These were things his machines could never capture. The discovery was not yet spoken aloud, but inside Dranik's mind, the truth was already alive. The clones were hollow because they lacked what the humans carried naturally, the power of emotions, the mystery of the soul. The ship was no longer calm. The silence of the laboratories was broken by whispers. Arguments spread between the alien scientists. Some believed the experiments had already revealed a hidden truth. Others clung to the council's orders, saying, "There is no soul, only data." Dranik walked among them like a shadow, his mind heavy with doubt. Every day he returned to the humans' cages, and every day he saw what the clones lacked. The council demanded results. But what could he give them? Empty bodies? Machines shaped like men, but without meaning? One evening, as the humans sat huddled together, a man named Elias began to speak. His voice was low but steady. "They think they can copy us," he said, "but they will never copy our hearts." The others nodded, some cried, some clenched their fists. The mother with the child whispered, "One day we will leave this place." The words gave the prisoners strength, but they also gave them a plan. Secret signals passed between cages, small nods, brief glances. A rebellion was being born, not with weapons, but with faith. Meanwhile, the arguments inside the alien ranks grew louder. A young scientist shouted, "Look at them. The humans heal each other without tools. They create hope where there should be none. That is something real." Another snapped back, "Superstition. Emotions are noise in the system. Nothing more." Dranik stood silent, but his black eyes betrayed his conflict. Late at night, when most of the ship was quiet, Elias pressed his hand against the glass and stared at Dranik. His voice was steady. "You know the truth, don't you?" Dranik did not answer, but he did not turn away either. For the first time, an alien and a human looked at each other and shared the same unspoken thought. The clones were lifeless because something deeper was missing. The next day, another experiment began. The aliens ordered a clone to fight a human. The clone moved with speed and strength, but every strike was mechanical. Elias dodged, his body weaker, but his eyes burning with will. With every blow, the difference was clear. The clone fought because it was told to. Elias fought because he wanted to live. The humans began to whisper louder in their cages. "They cannot win." One said, "We will show them what it means to be alive." Their voices grew bolder, feeding each other with courage. Soon, even some aliens began to doubt. Rumors spread that Dranik had hesitated during tests, that he no longer believed in the council's vision. The word soul was whispered in the corridors, a word forbidden among the Zorth. When the council demanded proof of success, Dranik gave them silence. His reports grew shorter, his eyes darker. He could no longer lie to himself. The truth was already clear. The humans were unique. But truth has power, and power brings rebellion. The humans were ready, the aliens were divided, and the perfect order of Azorith was beginning to crack. The rebellion did not start with fire or weapons. It started with truth. The truth that humans carried something beyond science. The truth that no machine could ever build. The truth that frightened even the most powerful race in the galaxy. And in the shadows of the ship, as humans whispered plans of escape and aliens whispered fears of failure, one quiet realization grew louder. The age of control was ending, and the age of truth was about to begin. The moment of change came quietly. It did not begin with a great battle, but with a single mistake. A young alien guard forgot to fully lock one of the cage doors. Elias noticed the small gap at once. His eyes widened, and he whispered to the others, "This is our chance." The humans had waited for weeks. Their whispers had grown into secret plans. They had no weapons, no tools, but they had unity, and unity was stronger than any machine. That night, as the ship's lights dimmed into rest mode, Elias pushed against the weak lock. The door clicked open. For the first time in months, he stepped into the corridor, free. The others followed silently. Their hearts pounded. Their breaths were heavy, but their spirits were alive. They moved like shadows through the metal halls, guided by hope, not fear. In the main lab, Dranik stood over another clone experiment. The body floated inside the glowing tank, perfect in form but dead in spirit. His assistants recorded data without emotion. But Dranik's eyes were distant. He no longer cared about numbers. His mind was trapped between duty and truth. Suddenly, the alarm blared, red lights flashed, the humans had been spotted, guards rushed forward. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Elias raised his hands. Not in surrender, but in defiance. "We are not copies," he shouted. "We are alive." The guards hesitated. Their orders were simple: capture or kill. But the human's courage was unsettling. Dranik stepped forward, raising his hand. "Wait," he ordered. His voice echoed through the chamber. The guards froze, uncertain. Dranik turned to the council leader, who had just arrived through the communication screen. "You must see the truth," Dranik said. "We can copy flesh, we can copy memory, but we cannot copy what makes them human." The leader's voice thundered. "Nonsense. Continue the experiments, destroy the prisoners if they resist." But before the order could be carried out, the mother stepped forward, holding her child. Her voice trembled but carried strength. "You will never take what is inside us," she said. "You can build 1,000 bodies, but you will never make a soul." The chamber fell into silence. Even the machines seemed to pause. Dranik looked at the clone in the tank, then at the mother and child, and finally at Elias. He saw the fire in their eyes, the same fire missing from every copy. At that moment, Dranik made his choice. He turned to the guards. "Stand down." He commanded. The guards shifted nervously. Some obeyed, some hesitated. The humans clutched each other, not knowing if they were saved or doomed. Dranik spoke louder, his voice steady. "The council is wrong. These humans carry something beyond our reach, something science cannot touch. If we destroy them, we destroy the greatest mystery of the universe." The leader screamed through the screen, "You betray us, Dranik." But Dranik did not bow. He looked at Elias and the others. "Go," he whispered, "find your freedom." The humans began to run. Their bare feet echoed against the cold floors. Guards chased. Alarms screamed. But something had changed. The Zorith were no longer united. Some aimed their weapons. Others lowered them. Fear and doubt spread like fire. Elias led the group toward the docking bay. His voice urged them on. "Keep moving. Do not stop. We are almost there." The child clung to his mother, whispering, "Are we going home?" She kissed his hair. "Yes, my love, yes." Behind them, Dranik stood tall, facing his own people. The truth had been spoken, and the rebellion had begun. The escape was not just about freedom. It was about revelation, the revelation that humans were more than flesh, more than memory, more than science. They were alive in a way no machine could ever copy, and that truth could not be silenced. The humans' escape shook the Zorith Empire. Word spread across the galaxy faster than light. Messages whispered in secret channels. Rumors traded markets. Even the most distant races heard the story. Humans could not be copied. Their bodies could be cloned. Their memories could be stolen. But their essence, their soul, was untouchable. The council tried to silence the truth. They called Dranik a traitor. They called the humans liars. But silence was impossible. Too many eyes had seen the difference. Too many ears had heard the words of the mother and Elias. The truth was alive, and it traveled like fire. On distant planets, alien leaders debated the meaning. If humans cannot be cloned, one said, then they carry something no other race has. Another whispered with fear, if they have what we do not, what does that make us? Among common people, the reaction was stronger. Some races admired humans, calling them chosen. Others feared them, whispering that a species with an untouchable soul might one day rule the stars. For the Zorith, it was disaster. Their empire had been built on control. If they could not control humans, their power was weakened. Soldiers whispered doubts. Scientists argued in secret. The word soul spread through their society like a forbidden melody. Dranik himself became a symbol. To some he was a betrayer, to others a prophet. His decision to let the humans escape divided his people. Some demanded his execution, while others began to question everything they had believed. Meanwhile, the escaped humans traveled through the void. Every star they passed felt like a step closer to freedom. Elias looked at the child and said, "We are alive because of what they could not steal." The mother smiled softly, and because one of them saw the truth. When they reached a safe planet, the story grew even larger. Other races came to see them, to speak with them, to feel what made them different, and every time they laughed, cried, or sang, the aliens felt something stir inside themselves, something they had long forgotten. The revelation spread, and it was no longer about experiments. It was about the soul, about the unseen spark. Humans became a mirror to the galaxy, forcing every race to ask the same question: what truly makes us alive? For some, it was inspiring. For others, it was terrifying. Wars had been fought for less, and now, the simple existence of humanity had become the greatest shock in history. In the halls of the Zorith Council, rage burned. "We cannot allow this," the leader growled. "If the galaxy believes in their uniqueness, they will rise against us," another answered. "But how do we fight what we cannot understand?" The chamber fell into silence for the first time in their history. The Zorith felt fear, not of weapons, not of armies, but of something invisible, something eternal, and far away. As humans looked at the stars, Elias whispered, "They thought they could own us, but now they know we are more than bodies. We are more than copies. We are human." The galaxy did not return to silence. The truth about humans had spread too far, too fast. Every world now looked at them with new eyes. Some saw danger, others saw hope, but all agreed on one thing: humans could not be copied. On the small, safe planet where the escaped humans lived, life began again. They built shelters, grew food, and sang songs under the strange skies. Each night, Elias gathered the survivors, telling them, "We are more than survivors. We are proof." The child listened with wide eyes. The mother smiled with quiet pride. Their simple lives carried a weight greater than empires. Dranik's name was whispered in the galaxy. Some called him a traitor to his people. Others called him the first alien to see the truth. He vanished from Zorith control. No one knew if he was alive, but his choice lived on. His defiance was part of the new story. The Zorith Council tried to regain order. They shouted of power. They promised victory, but their words rang hollow. Their people had seen too much. Many of them now asked questions that could not be silenced. What is a soul? Why do humans shine with something unseen? Other alien races began to change. Some philosophers wrote that the human soul was a gift from the universe. Some warriors swore never to fight them again, fearing that harming a human meant harming something eternal. Some leaders quietly planned alliances, thinking, if we cannot break them, we must stand beside them. Among the humans themselves, there was both pride and burden. They were honored for their uniqueness, but they also felt the weight of expectation. Elias looked at the stars and whispered, "They think we are special, but we must show them that our soul is not for fear, but for hope." One night, as fires burned gently outside their camp, the mother told her child, "Remember this, they can copy your face, your voice, even your memories, but they cannot copy your heart. Never forget that." The child nodded, his small hands holding hers. That moment was simple, but it carried the power of generations. The galaxy continued to watch, and slowly, stories began to grow. Tales of humans spreading courage. Tales of humans healing broken worlds. They were not rulers, not conquerors, but living reminders that life was more than data, more than logic, more than machines. The Zorith, once proud and unshaken, now feared the idea they could never crush. They had lost not by battle, but by truth. Their science could not touch what humans carried in silence. And so the legacy of humanity began, whispered in spaceports, written in alien texts, sung by races who had once ignored them. The legacy was not about power, but about soul, the invisible fire inside every human. As Elias stood beneath the stars, he felt it too. He spoke softly, words meant for every race. They can fear us, they can doubt us, they can even try to break us, but they will never understand us fully, for we are human, and the soul cannot be duplicated. The stars above seemed to listen, carrying his words across the dark, and the galaxy, forever changed, waited to see what humanity would become.